probably in his 90s now, 80s to 90s. He was a very old man, but he interviewed me for a job at Cornell's. I think I told you back when I was just doing my doctorate. He didn't like me. I didn't get the job anyway, which is why you see me standing here. But I did encounter Netanyahu's father at that time. And then he interviewed me in a cafe in Jerusalem, because that's where I was writing my dissertation on the Islamic law in Palestine and Israel. But in any event, to go back to this kibbutz movement, the Israeli army and these left-wing people like Rabin and Ben-Gurion and so on and so forth. Peretz in the present government is someone like that, but he and Moshe Dayan with the eye patch is another one who was on one of those kibbutzes around the Galilee. His parents helped settle that kibbutz around the Galilee. And you know, he came out of that, and he's just a pure military man by the time he's done with an interest in archaeology. But Sharon now. Sharon comes out of the kibbutz movement too. These are all left-wingers who say, well, he's a right-winger. Oh, well, not originally. Originally, he's out of the left-wing kibbutz movement, but his father broke with that left-wing kibbutz movement. All these people have fathers, you see. And you have to see the people within the context of where they're coming from. And his father went into the Moshav movement, which is different than the kibbutz movement. Moshav movement is you own your own house, you own your own fields, you take care of your own agricultural activity, and you only have to do with the other members of the Moshav by cooperating in the equipment that you use. The equipment is owned by everybody, the tractors, all that sort of thing. But you are responsible, and the Moshav probably markets your produce or whatever, but you're responsible for what you produce. So it mixes a little bit of private ownership in with collectivism. So there are so Moshav is a little intermediate thing, and that's what Ariel Sharon's father moved into, and he was brought up in that atmosphere. So he's already, so what does he become? He becomes a big landowner down in the Negev desert. He has a big ranch. No one in Israel has a ranch, but when he got powerful and everything, he got some American and other people's financiers to fund him, and he bought himself a big property down there where he raised cattle and stuff. But his background is still from the agricultural background of the Moshav. So that's why he's different, and then of course that's why he can swing back and forth the way he's done. People think he's a right winger, but in fact he isn't. He can go back and forth because he has a double background there. He's on the right wing side of the labor movement, but he's still considered a left winger in Israel. This has to do with Israel. Okay, so you have all those kinds of things going on. But for people like Ahad Ha'am, he wanted Israel to be a cultural center. Not Israel, but he wanted a cultural center to encourage Jewish learning, Jewish scholarship, you know, renewal of Judaism and so on and so forth. He didn't really want or was not interested in a state. And that's the difference between Ahad Ha'am and Herzl. Herzl sees the need for a state. And that doesn't mean Herzl's a big, giant cultural person. Herzl was a writer. Herzl did write fiction. But his Jewish learning was probably meager. And for someone like Ahad, if you've ever been in these atmospheres, I know, I go to all these conferences, I know what it's like. You know, if you get someone who's been trained as a yeshiva booker from the time they're 5 years old, has been studying the Talmud and the Torah every day of their life for 50 years and so on, and then you come as a westernized sort of outsider, I mean, the contempt they have for you is so massive you can't even imagine it. So there are these divisions within the people itself if you're not trained in the way they're trained and so on. So Ahad Ha'am would come out of that environment. That was one of the problems. Mendelssohn could straddle the two, but you see, Mendelssohn's children couldn't. And so you either get westernized or you're like in one of those things in Pakistan, one of those madrasas, where people are only learning about Islam. That's all they're learning. Okay, so here we have an essay, 1904, Flesh and Spirit. And he's interested in body and soul, nephesh. He's talking about the soul. 257, it's true that early Jewish life there were Nazarites who observed certain of the outward practices of asceticism. They've misspelled Nazarite. It should be Nazirites. So he's interested, so far we can't see, he's just talking about Jewish intellectual things. 258, it was not till the period of the Second Temple that political asceticism found expression in the life of the Jewish state. He knows about the Essenes, so he knows his scholarship to some extent. The Essenes gave up political life in despair. Bottom of that 258, turned their backs on incurable corruption, withdrew into the wilderness to live out individual lives in purity and holiness. Yeah, he's right in a way. The political asceticism of the Essenes had much influence on the general trend of thought. Did not have much influence. Well, he forgot that it produced Christianity, so I don't know what he's talking about. But anyway, we've now found the Dead Sea Scrolls, which are supposed to be Essene documents, and if that's withdrawing from politics, then you must be dreaming, because these people are waiting for the final apocalyptic war against all evil on the earth, and they're not withdrawing from anything. They're actually very aggressive and militant, which is one of the contradictions in Dead Sea Scroll research that I cover in my classes. In any event, it was not to them, top of 259, but to the Pharisees that the people looked to for instruction and leadership. And the Pharisees represented the prophetic conception of Judaism with its unification of body and soul. Well, you know, I have contempt for all this kind of writing, I have to be honest with you. I mean, this is so sort of pseudo-intellectual. I mean, the Pharisees don't represent anything about the unification of body and soul. This is only in his imagining. And he only is praising the Pharisees because they gave birth to Rabbinic Judaism. And Rabbinic Judaism is what the Romans allowed the Jews to practice after the fall of the temple. And that was the Pharisee party that was willing to live with foreign power. So obviously, if you're a Pharisee, you're going to be willing to live with foreign power forever. And so obviously, he's not interested in a political state. You know, he's not, this is not the Maccabees. This is not, so you can trace these strains all the way through. And you can always find, if someone is into Rabbinic Judaism, which is fine, nothing wrong with it, you can be sure that they're not going to do anything to oppose Hitler. And it's going to be left to the Zionist organizations to fight in the Warsaw Ghetto. You say, how do you know?